Let's start with one of the most famous prophecies in the series, the Valonqar prophecy. This one's all about Cersei Lannister, and it's a big deal in the books. When Cersei was young, she visited a fortune teller named Maggie the Frog. Maggie told her a few things about her future. First, she said Cersei wouldn't marry Prince Rhaegar, but she would wed the king. Check. Cersei married Robert Baratheon. This part of the prophecy came true pretty quickly, setting the stage for Cersei's rise to power and her eventual downfall. Next, Maggie said Cersei would be queen, until there comes another, younger and more beautiful, to cast you down and take all that you hold dear. For a long time, Cersei thought this was Margaery Tyrell. She spent seasons plotting against the young Tyrell, seeing her as the biggest threat to her power. But in the end, it was Daenerys Targaryen who literally burned everything Cersei held dear. This part of the prophecy drove much of Cersei's paranoia and cruel actions throughout the series. Then came the really juicy part. Maggie said, "The king will have 6 and 10 children, and you will have 3. Gold shall be their crowns, and gold their shrouds." This also came true. Robert had 16 bastards, and Cersei had 3 children with Jaime, all blonde, all who became royalty, and all who died. The deaths of Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were some of the most shocking moments in the series, and each one brought Cersei closer to her breaking point. In the books, the prophecy ends with, "And when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you." Valonqar means little brother in High Valyrian. For years, fans speculated about who this could be. Tyrion? He was Cersei's younger brother, and she always hated him. Jaime? He was born after Cersei, technically making him her little brother too. Maybe even Arya wearing Jaime's face? The theories were endless. This part of the prophecy was completely left out. Instead of being killed by a younger sibling, Cersei died under a pile of rocks with Jaime. Talk about anticlimactic. After years of build-up, many fans felt cheated by this ending. Where was the dramatic confrontation we'd been promised? So why include the prophecy at all if it wasn't going to pay off? Well, that's a question a lot of fans were asking by the end of the series. But before we get into that, let's look at another big prophecy that had fans theorizing for years. Have you ever wondered why Melisandre was so obsessed with finding the right person to back? It all comes down to the prophecy of the prince that was promised, also known as Azor Ahai Reborn. According to legend, Azor Ahai was a legendary hero who fought back the darkness thousands of years ago. The prophecy says he or she would be reborn to save the world once again when the Long Night returns. This prophecy is central to the religion of R'hllor, the Lord of Light, and drives much of Melisandre's actions throughout the series. The prince that was promised is supposed to be born amidst salt and smoke and wake dragons from stone. They're also supposed to wield a flaming sword called Lightbringer. In the original legend, Azor Ahai forged Lightbringer by plunging it into the heart of his beloved wife, Nysa Nissa. This led to a lot of speculation about whether history would repeat itself. Throughout the series, several characters seem to fit parts of this prophecy. Daenerys was born on Dragonstone during a storm, and she literally woke dragons from stone eggs. Melisandre thought Stannis was the prince for a while, even going so far as to have him pull a flaming sword from a fire. Later, she seemed to think it might be Jon Snow, especially after she resurrected him. But who actually fulfilled this prophecy in the end? Well, no one, really. Arya Stark killed the Night King, ending the Long Night, but she didn't fit any of the criteria from the prophecy. Jon and Daenerys both had roles to play, but neither of them single-handedly saved the world as the prophecy suggested. Jon did kill Daenerys, which some fans saw as a parallel to the Azor Ahai Nysa Nissa story, but it didn't result in a magical flaming sword. So what gives? Was all that build-up for nothing? Before we answer that, let's look at a few more prophecies that didn't quite pan out. This one's a bit more obscure, but it had fans theorizing like crazy. In the House of the Undying, Daenerys has a vision of her brother Rhaegar saying, "The dragon has 3 heads." Now, this line didn't make it into the show, but the idea of 3 heads of the dragon is a big deal in Targaryen history. It refers to Aegon the Conqueror and his 2 sister wives, who rode 3 dragons to conquer Westeros. This image is even represented in the Targaryen sigil, a 3-headed dragon. When Daenerys hatched 3 dragons, fans went wild trying to figure out who the 3 riders would be. Dany was obviously one, and many thought Jon Snow would be another once his true heritage was revealed. But who would be the third? Popular theories included Tyrion. Some thought he might secretly be a Targaryen, Bran warging into a dragon maybe, or even the Night King after he took control of Viserion. Some fans even suggested that the 3 heads didn't necessarily have to be dragon riders, but could represent 3 Targaryens who would rule together. In the end, though, this prophecy didn't really amount to much. Daenerys rode Drogon, Jon briefly rode Rhaegal, and the Night King rode undead Viserion, but they never came together as a unified force of 3 dragon riders. It was just another prophecy that seemed to fizzle out. But wait, there's more. Remember all those cryptic warnings about the White Walkers? In the books, the legendary artifact called the Horn of Winter, or the Horn of Joramun. According to wildling legend, this horn has the power to bring down the Wall. It's said that Joramun, a king beyond the Wall from thousands of years ago, used it to wake giants from the earth. Early in the show, Sam finds an old horn buried with a cache of dragon glass. Many fans thought this might be the Horn of Winter, and that it would play a crucial role in the White Walkers' invasion. There was a lot of speculation about who might blow the horn and what exactly would happen when they did. But guess what? That horn was never mentioned again. The Wall ended up coming down because the Night King used undead Viserion to blast it with blue fire. No magical horn required. It was a spectacular scene, sure, but it left a lot of fans wondering why the show had bothered to introduce the horn in the first place. Speaking of the White Walkers, remember those creepy spiral symbols they kept leaving? The show made a big deal out of these, even showing us their origin in the Children of the Forest's ritual that created the first White Walker. These symbols appeared multiple times throughout the series, from the very first episode to the gruesome message left at Last Hearth in the final season. But in the end, we never got an explanation for what they meant or why they were important. Were they some kind of magic? The show never told us, leaving it as yet another unresolved mystery. Way back in Season 1, when Daenerys was pregnant with Khal Drogo's child, the Dothraki crones prophesied that her son would be the stallion who mounts the world. This legendary figure was supposed to unite all the Dothraki Khalasars and conquer the world. It was a big moment for Daenerys, cementing her position among the Dothraki and hinting at her future as a conqueror. But then Daenerys lost the baby, and that was pretty much the end of that prophecy. Or was it? Some fans speculated that maybe Daenerys herself was the stallion who mounts the world. After all, she did unite the Dothraki under her banner and set out to conquer Westeros. She even referred to her dragons as her children, so in a way they could be seen as fulfilling the prophecy. However, the show never really addressed this prophecy again. It was just another plot thread left dangling. We never got confirmation one way or the other about whether Daenerys or her dragons were the prophesied stallion. And speaking of Daenerys losing her baby, remember the curse Mirri Maz Duur put on her? She said Drogo would return to Daenerys when the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, when the seas go dry and mountains blow in the wind like leaves. Oh, and also when Daenerys could have children again. In the end, it seems it was just a curse. Daenerys never had another child, and none of those impossible events came to pass, but the curse did drive a lot of Daenerys' actions. Her belief that she couldn't have children influenced her relationship with Jon Snow and her plans for succession. So even if the prophecy itself didn't come true, it still had an impact on the story. So what's going on here? Why set up all these prophecies if they're not going to pay off? Well, there are a few possibilities. First, it's worth noting that some prophecies and visions did come true, at least in part. Bran's visions of dragons flying over King's Landing and ash falling in the throne room were pretty spot on. These visions foreshadowed Daenerys' attack on King's Landing, one of the most shocking moments in the series. And in Daenerys' vision in the House of the Undying, she walks up to the Iron Throne but never sits on it, which is exactly what happened in the finale. She came so close to her goal, only to be killed before she could claim it. The vision also showed her reuniting with Drogo and their son in what seemed to be the afterlife, which could be seen as foreshadowing her death. But these visions didn't really impact the plot. The characters who had them didn't change their actions because of what they saw. They were more like foreshadowing for the audience than actual prophecies within the story. So why include all these other prophecies that didn't come true? Well, it's possible this was intentional. Think about it. Throughout the series, we see characters making terrible decisions because they're trying to fulfill or avoid prophecies. Cersei's fear of the Valonqar prophecy drives her to be cruel to Tyrion and distrustful of Jaime. Her paranoia about losing her children makes her overprotective and ultimately pushes them away. Stannis sacrifices his own daughter because he believes he's destined to be king. Rhaegar Targaryen may have started a war because he believed his son would be the prince that was promised. This ties into one of the major themes of the finale: breaking the wheel. The old way of doing things, hereditary monarchy, believing in prophecies, is over. The new Westeros is supposed to be based on merit, not birth or destiny. By choosing Bran as king and setting up a system where rulers are chosen rather than born into power, the characters are rejecting the idea that fate controls everything. So what do you think? Did you have a favorite prophecy that you wish had come true? Let me know in the comments below. The great thing about a show like Game of Thrones is that there's always more to discuss and debate. And if you enjoyed this dive into the world of Game of Thrones prophecies, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos breaking down your favorite TV shows and movies. Until next time, remember, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. But when you play the game of prophecies in Game of Thrones, apparently, you just kind of forget about them.